Maura Gillespie with us, the founder of Blue Stack Strategies, former advisor to Speaker John Boehner and Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Maura, it's great to see you as we meet here, apparently on an historic day. Do you think Kevin McCarthy has the votes to survive, or is this the end?
It's going to be an interesting next few minutes here. I mean, the fact that Pelosi is not here to vote to oust McCarthy, which I think is kind of an interesting take here, that she's missing votes. I just saw online that she's, racing back from the airport, but doesn't look like she's going to make it. So it's certainly something that, is part of this issue, right? Not all members are there to vote. And so this becomes a numbers game for Kevin McCarthy. It really does come down to the numbers and how he can survive the five that have said that they're not going to vote for him or they're going to vote to oust him. So it's going to be a numbers game for Kevin McCarthy, but he has obviously seen that before as we played that game in January. And it's unfortunate, though, because there's so much work that needs to get done. And I know that's been repeated, but here we are again. And it's no wonder that the American people are wondering what Congress actually does.
You could make the argument, Maura, that no matter what happens today, whether McCarthy's ousted or whether his job is preserved, that this could make budget negotiations even more difficult as we walk into November and another potential shutdown. How do you see it?
Well, it does, because what Kevin McCarthy did over the weekend, like him or not, trust him or not, he got the job done and kept our government open, because a government shutdown would have just been handing it to the Democrats with every right to be, lamenting what Republicans failed to do, which is the job that is House of Representatives. You have to fund the government. And so Kevin McCarthy did what he had to do this weekend and shocked a lot of people, probably myself included, that it got done. And then on the flip side, so going in with all that momentum and having, the best case scenario, okay, let's work together. Let's put it on the Senate. Matt Gaetz comes in and kind of just throws a bomb in all of it. And now whatever leverage was had is completely gone, because this just shows that they are not doing the job that they've been elected to do. They're not actually working on the bills they're supposed to be working on. Instead, they're having this chaos and doesn't look like they're able to govern, unfortunately.
It's entirely possible, we understand, that Nancy Pelosi may not make this vote. It's not a long ride from the airport, but I can assure you the traffic today is miserable. I want to ask you about your experience, though, with Speaker Boehner, who knew about a motion to vacate. I believe it was Congressman Meadows who brought that to the floor. It wasn't privileged and it was never voted on. But you were part of that office when that feeling was in the air. What's happening inside the Speaker's office today?
It's very stressful. It's also very frustrating because people are just trying to do their jobs and fight the bigger, fight. And what this in-house fighting, this in-conference fighting is super frustrating, especially because it's done publicly. You want to keep your fights in the family. That's what both sides want to try and do as much as possible. But when you have someone like a Matt Gaetz who is really just thinking about himself and only himself, that's almost impossible to deal with. And again, Matt Gaetz is loving this moment because he's getting this attention, and he loves that there's only a 5-seat majority. He needs that over Kevin McCarthy. That's how he's holding the whole conference hostage. So for me, I remember, obviously, I have certain feelings about Mark Meadows, because I do, again, you see right through it. You see that it's a detention-seeking effort. It's to appease a small portion of what they think is their base. Mark Meadows, again, if anyone read John Boehner's book, came groveling in, crying on his knees. And that just should tell you everything about what they're really doing on the public-facing aspect, and then what they are saying behind closed doors. I don't think there's any love lost between Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy. But again, this is just Matt Gaetz trying to, suck up all the oxygen and get in front of the cameras. And in that sense, he's succeeding. But in doing the job that he was elected to do, he is miserably failing.
Wow. Think of the scene that Maura Gillespie just described for us. So that's another way of saying as well, relationships are being redefined, lines are being drawn. If Kevin McCarthy survives this, what happens to somebody like Matt Gaetz?
He'll continue to, unfortunately for us, for the Republican Party, he's going to continue to do this. He's going to bring up this motion to vacate because he has the ability to do so within the rules that were set in January. And to continue to fundraise off of it, which is the end of the day, that's really what he is doing. He's been fundraising off of it. And this weekend he did a media blitz on the Sunday shows and fundraised off of that. So he's just campaigning off of it, partially to build up his own profile, his own brand, but also to account for any impending legal bills that will be coming his way when he has this ethics complaint or ethics investigation that's been renewed, and he'll need to kind of account for that. So it's unfortunately the relationship's not going to repair itself. This is
Right.
more just about the prerogatives of Matt Gaetz versus Kevin McCarthy. And I will also point out, Democrats, it was a different situation when it was John Boehner as Speaker, or even when it was Paul Ryan as Speaker. But when John Boehner was Speaker, there was a level of respect and appreciation. They may not have agreed with his policies, obviously, the Democrats did not, but they respected that John Boehner would get the job done and do it was in the best interest of the whole House. And I would just say that there's a handful of Democrats, if not all, who don't have that same faith and confidence in a Kevin McCarthy.
Boy, that's something else. It looks like this vote is being delayed here. It's interesting that
Yeah.
Matt Gaetz needs 5 votes, right? And there are 5 Democrats missing. So this actually could be put on the table for a moment, and we'll let you know how that goes. Just another reminder, Maura, of how thin this margin is.
Right. Yeah, and we saw that, in 2015 when it was brought up, there was a funeral happening in New York, and so the numbers were different because there were a handful of members of the New York delegation, both Republicans and Democrats, that were up in New York, and so they weren't available for the vote. So the number game is really important, especially when you have a thin majority, as Kevin McCarthy does in the Republican conference. But again, what's so frustrating too, and I'm sure it's frustrating for people at home going, what is happening? Why can't they just do their jobs? You have
Yeah,
Matt
right.
Gaetz, and people have asked him, what's your plan here? What's the plan? And there isn't one, right? He is going into this knowing that there isn't a plan for, if he were to succeed, he has no idea what would happen next. And that's what's scary to me, is you have people in Congress who don't actually want Congress to work. That's a problem. And people should be really alarmed by that.
Maura, thank you. Maura Gillespie, it's great to have you back. A Republican strategist, founder of BlueStack Strategies,